Hey everyone, Ponyo here. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of After Dinner Mints. Before we begin, I want to encourage everyone watching to join the community in the Art Blocks Discord. A link to our Discord can be found in the description of this video. As always, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss an episode of our weekly show. As I mentioned in last week's episode, before we begin, we have changed the format for the giveaway so that you will need to write in the correct answer for the first trivia question, and you won't be able to proceed to the other questions unless you get that first question correct. As a hint, it will be a video game related question. The giveaway will occur on Friday, December 17th at 3 p.m. Central. And now I want to introduce our guest for this evening. We have generative artist Darien Brito.
Hello, hello.
Well, Darien, thank you so much for joining me on After Dinner Mints. It's I've been, you just had your drop called Paths, which I think is beautiful, which we'll get into a little bit later on. But I'm interested to kind of talk a little bit about your background and early work. And can you kind of kick things off by telling us a little bit about your background when it comes to art?
Sure thing. So, well, my background is in music. I used to be a classical violinist. That's what I wanted to be when I was younger. And as I was studying music, I had a lot of exposure as well to literature. My dad, he writes poetry. So I was always into the arts somehow. Never into visual arts, but always into music or literature. And then at some point, I wanted to compose. So I went to study composition. I came here to where I live now is in the Netherlands, but I'm from Ecuador. So when I came here, I studied composition. But in that process, I fell in love with modular synthesizers. And then instead of reading notes, I started to read manuals. So I started to learn how to patch things around, fell into computers, and yeah, I started to program a lot as well. And over time, I changed my career a little bit to do electronic music composition, not like a DJ, but much more abstract kind of music. Let's say like the classical music, but in the electronic world. And while doing that, I started to collaborate with artists and other people who asked me to program things for them. And I started to involve a lot of programming in my own pieces and my own works. And as it turns out, I ended up going so into that path that now I am really is totally intertwined with my activities, and I'm also a developer um, as part of my practice.
Got it. And I have a music background myself, actually, but I'm curious to know: do you actually still play the violin, or is that something you still, dabble with here and there?
No, I don't play anymore. It's to be honest, it's quite painful for me to play it emotionally because I
Okay.
cannot play it as I could before, and I also it has been so long, and it brings all these memories of that time of my life.
Mhm.
I'm not unhappy about what happened, but of course, it's some nostalgia. But I did compensate it by getting a wife who is a violin player, so that
Oh, that's
works
good.
out.
There you go. That's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And I'm actually curious. You said you have that kind of audio background. Is that something you might incorporate into some kind of future work down the road?
Actually, I really wanted to do it for paths,
Mm-hmm.
but issue is that since paths is very computationally demanding,
Mm-hmm.
and you have this restriction of only a single library, it's a bit difficult to make like a compelling visual piece that also has audio. So I
Mm-hmm.
decided, okay, let's focus later on a audio specific one, but definitely is in the plan. Yeah.
Great. Definitely look forward to that. When you started getting into art, who were some of the artists that you looked up to and inspired you to, kind of follow your dream in creating work, pieces of art?
Yeah, I mean, I understood your question now. Like you mean more visual arts, right? Because
Yeah,
there's a
video.
whole,
Yeah, visual
yeah,
arts. Yep.
yeah. So I want to show you my screen. I'll pull up this little presentation.
Okay. Great.
Can you see it?
Yep. See it.
Great, great. So while I was studying, I was really into, yeah, I was exploring and discovering all this generative approach to creating art. And the first thing that struck me, like very strongly, was this piece by Hans Haacke.
Mm.
It's a quite a famous piece. It's called Condensation Cube, and in particular, his way of approaching pieces. I put here a little quote. I don't know if it's readable, but it says, "Make something indeterminate, which always looks different, the shape of which cannot be predicted precisely." which applies so well to what we're doing here. And this is from his unpublished manifesto. I recommend everyone to check that out. Check that out because
Yeah.
it's quite interesting. But the piece itself, it is a generative process. It's just a box where a lot of condensation occurs because of humidity and all the processes inside. And it's quite beautiful to contemplate this in this closed universe, let's say. So that was very influential of how my mindset switched
Mhm.
about processes. Then, of course, Vera Molnar, she's a legendary
Yeah.
pioneer of computer work. She was also quite an inspiration when especially these kind of line tangent kind of pieces, because they are very, in a way, very computer-like, but at the same time relating to that graph aesthetic that computers have by nature. Then Golan Levin, he's a legendary educator and legendary creative coder. Some of his pieces, they had a huge impact when I was studying complexity, complex systems, especially Flocus and the piece on the top left, segmentation and symptom. Um, because, well, the way he uses this idea of networks, interconnected networks, was very attractive to me when I was studying music as well. So I
Mm.
tried to integrate this philosophy on my music work. Then obviously Jared Tarvel, I think everybody knows him in the creative coding space. He's an amazing artist. I think had a huge influence as well when I was studying this type of works. Michael Hansmeyer, especially his work on L systems, um, which are an amazing way of constructing structures. So the algorithm for that is quite fascinating. If you don't know it, I think it's quite a nice thing to explore.
Yeah, those look really
Uh,
complex. And even
and
I was kind of looking at that one from Jared, the slide before that, and that
yeah,
bottom piece kind of reminds me of. It gives me a little bit of vibes of like Hashtractors, like your
oh,
first project. Yeah, yeah,
perhaps the
exactly.
aesthetic or something. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
just a little bit. Kind of reminds me of it, which is great.
But this is way better. Node gardening is really nice.
It is a beautiful piece. I love it.
Yeah. Hans Meyer, and then Casey Rias, who is also in Artblocks now. Very, very happy that he joined it. I will talk about Casey a little bit more in what I wanted to explain about my practice in general. So I'm gonna skip it for now because
Okay,
we're gonna come to him later.
great.
Then Edit software. I mean, a lot of people. I'm really not so much into the art world like I was saying before. I'm really from the music world,
Hmm.
and somehow I ended up into doing computer graphics. So for me, one of the main things that influenced me during my whole life, musically and visually, was this game in particular. It's Quake. It
And
was released in 1996.
that's so crazy. Yeah, that's like one around. I remember Doom came out, but this your favorite video game?
Is my favorite. It's the best video game ever
Quake.
made for
Okay,
me.
great.
Quake. Because the sound design is incredible. It was made by Trent Reznor from Nine Inch Nails.
Yeah.
Amazing. I even have a vinyl record of it because I love it so much. Just the soundtrack and the effects, but also visually, it is technically amazing what the developers of ID Software did. John Carmack, he was the main developer, and for the tech, it's an incredible achievement because it's true 3D, and that in that time, a game like
Yeah.
this is insane. So it made a huge impact on me seeing how things could be done in the computer, musically and well, sonically and visually, right?
That's great. That's awesome.
Then naturally, Quayola, he's a legendary creative coder and artist, especially his iconographies. I saw them live in Belgium, I think it was, and he also works sometimes with different artists to produce artworks that are hybrid, like the one below is Ravel landscapes, so the pieces by Ravel playing the piano, and he made a really beautiful visualization. So I
Wow.
thought, oh well, this is a great connection between visual and audio.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then Ryoji Ikeda, who is a Japanese artist, very focused into minimalism on sound and also visually, although as you can see, his expression is very maximalist, trying to take as much space as possible. But the means that he uses are very, very minimal, which I really enjoy. So it's just lines, dots. Um, in the sound, is just very basic waveforms, square waves, sine waves. So the most basic elements and create this complexity, which I really, really appreciate. And I've seen these works live as well.
Oh wow.
So being immersed in the space is quite something. And then one of my favorites, if not my favorite composer, and let's not say composer, I correct myself, audiovisual artist, because he's also a performer, is Ryoichi Kurokawa. I think he has had the most influence on my own aesthetic. He's the most influential artist for me. Um, I find that his work is extremely powerful in terms of narrative and the poetic use of time. So he has an amazing, let's say, handling of how time behaves, gestures in sound and gestures in visual, but it's also very confronting. So I recommend checking out his work if you don't know it.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Then Inigo Quiles. This is my last slide about this artist, by the way. Maybe it's a bit too long,
No, no
but
problem. That was great.
Inigo is a fantastic. First of all, he's a fantastic artist. I believe he's, as you can see, the kind of stuff he does is all with shaders. So a little bit like my last drop was done using a technique called ray marching, and Inigo Quiles is a legendary exploiter of this technique. I learned a lot from reading his articles, checking his work, and all that you see here is generative. You see
Wow.
the forest, the fractals there, the thing up, this geodes. This is a Mandelbrot, so
The
it's a
de-
fractal.
the details on that are just, especially that top photo is just, I mean, it's exquisite. It's so good.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible stuff, and yeah, what can I say? It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So those would be, I think, artists that had a huge impact.
Excellent. And then, what was your introduction into the NFT and crypto space?
Well, yeah, there was a funny story because I had a friend from the conservatory who was studying the same as I was studying electronic music,
Hmm.
a Turkish friend. And then over time, we didn't keep in touch very much. And then he switched to the art academy, and I didn't see him for years and years. And then one day we were just chatting, and then he said, "Hey, I'm doing an NFT launch." And I said, "Oh, what is that?" Had no idea what NFT is. And that was this January, so this January. And he said, "Yeah, I'm doing a drop." So he made a whole project, and it's called Bastard Gun Punks.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That was really popular at that time. I mean, I know it still
Yeah.
is, but that's crazy.
So he made that project. It's his project, and he told me, "Yeah, man, you should buy one." And I said, "Okay." But then I went and checked the website, and the price for me was insane. Like, okay, what is this? Why am I gonna pay this for this thing?
Yeah.
And I didn't get it. I totally didn't get the thing, And they said, okay, no, it's okay, just buy it, and I refund you. Just get it for the
Yeah.
feel, Just
Yeah.
say, okay, cool. I can show you what I got actually.
Okay.
Uh, so it's these guys. My friend's name is Berk Ozdemir.
Okay. That's awesome.
Um,
You still
so I
have
got
them?
the I have these two here, these
Okay.
two on the right.
Okay.
The first one, I had it for a week, and then at some point I got a crazy offer for it, and I just couldn't believe
Yeah.
that. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to sell it. But then, then I felt really bad because I really wanted to have one because it's for my friend as his project, right? So
Hmm.
then I went immediately and bought two on the secondary market. So that was also my first experience on the secondary market,
Wow.
and it was all in the span of 1 week. So I had a crash course in
Wow.
all these things.
And what did you think
And
of it? Like, what was your initial? I mean, I know your initial thoughts, but like, once you started having that crash course, was it soon after that you're like, all right, I want to release something else myself, and then, you know, kind of experience it firsthand?
no, actually, after this, I got very scared about what the NFTs are. I thought it was very dangerous. It was very, I didn't get what the value of it is.
Hmm.
I had a lot of conversations with many people. Berk also explained how it felt, but I really couldn't wrap my head around it. It was only when another friend of mine who also released in art blocks, Bear van Heer,
Oh yeah.
he's a good friend of mine, and he was telling me all about NFTs as well. It was after a month of these bastard gunpunks. Um, and well, what I liked about the bastard gunpunks thing was that they had this a hacky relationship to the CryptoPunks. So I like the comment on that. I like that it was made with guns, with these generative adversarial neural networks.
Hmm.
And I also love the profanity of the site. If you go to Gastropan Punk, it's full of profanity. I,
Yeah.
I really liked everything about that thing. But then Bear came out with this idea that, but man, you can also do a different type of projects that are on chain. And I said, so what does that mean? He explained the whole thing. And I've been doing generative art for a while now, for quite some years.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, that really sounds like something I can do, like sounds like interesting thing.
Kind of spoke
He
to you a
showed
little
me
bit more.
his, yeah, definitely, definitely. So he showed me his work, what he did, showed me how the code kind of goes into the blockchain. And then I thought, okay, I started to dig into it. So it was his fault, or thanks to him that I started doing it. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure you appreciate them. I mean, I would hope that you appreciate them now. You've launched a couple projects on Art Block since then, and I think a lot more. It definitely takes time for people to kind of understand like what is actually happening in the space. It's not immediate by any means. But I think once you get it though, then it just clicks on all cylinders, and you just want to create and buy, and yeah, it just kind of evolves over time, I think.
Indeed, I think it takes a while to get accustomed to the idea of what these things are, what the value is, and to appreciate them. I'm quite happy with my things that I have from Berg, for example. At the beginning, it was all new, but now I appreciate them a lot. It has a sentiment as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And of course, obviously, the pieces I release with Art Blocks and other platform, I'm going to show you later as well. They obviously have a good connection. However, I still remain very skeptical, very critical of certain aspects of the technology, and I think it's because I think it's evolving in sometimes in ways that we don't want as artists,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes in ways that resemble too much the traditional art world and resemble too much what we're already used to see in normal economics
Yeah,
and then normal drive of greed and all that stuff, right? So I
definitely.
think we all experience those two things a
Mm-hmm.
little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would love to see, I don't know if you have some early generative art pieces that you kind of created, but it would be great to, we've obviously seen some of your pieces on art blocks, but it'd be great to kind of see some of those early, generative art pieces if you have any.
Sure thing. I'm gonna share my screen again. Okay. So yeah, the way I started doing generative art was, like I said, not with graphics at all, because I'm a musician. But I always had a certain way of approaching music that was generative in nature, because generative doesn't imply a computer. So generative processes can be anything that relies on some algorithmic process or some system. So, for example, this was my first consciously generative way of making a piece. It was called Chessboards and Triptych. So it's for string quartet, two violins and two cellos, and a vibraphone. And the idea with this piece was that I would just check the games from famous, let's say, famous chessboard games, um, and I would just translate the movements of the pieces directly to notes and durations in the score and see what comes out basically. So my system was the chess games, and I created three movements from chess games that I really found very beautiful. One of them that I'm showing here is Bern versus Fischer, quite a nice game. If you're into chess, of course, that is. Uh, and that's my first consciously generative piece. Then after doing that, I started to do some basic rudimental graphics, basically oscilloscope art. Oscilloscopes, I don't know if you're familiar, but
No.
are these machines that allow you to plot the electrical flow of audio signals, so you can see waveforms basically,
Okay, yeah, that makes sense now.
and you can plot them in one, two dimensions. So that's what I was doing here. It's called an additive stream. That was in 2013. Oh man, I'm so old now. Okay. Uh, and this was for an amplified string quartet, live electronics, and live visuals. So I started I have a video of it. Unfortunately, we tested this before, so you cannot hear the audio, but I think it still makes sense to show you
Yeah,
because
definitely.
it shows how I started to develop this idea of playing live with audio and with visuals. And somehow this idea of making it live for me was very important from the beginning. I'm not sure why, but yeah, anyways. Maybe because I used to play myself.
Yeah, no, I
Okay,
mean, that makes total sense, I think.
so this is a little excerpt I found. You made me dig down in my drives, so I had to.
Good, I'm glad.
Yeah. Okay, there you go.
So
So yeah,
how long did it take to kind of put this all together? You know, it sounds like you have a 4-piece group right there, and then you obviously have the visuals in the back.
yeah, indeed. So basically, oh, let me put the volume off. Yeah, basically the piece itself, the hardest part of this piece was not even the programming, but the notation for the musicians.
Mm.
And it has a big problem, this piece, which is very electronic in nature. So musicians, they are not so precise when you give them steady notes. So that took a while for them to get used to it, and also for me to understand that that's a limitation, as a limitation indeed, you know. So if you see here the score, these long notes, this means just play the same note, and in these parts, it's just moving a very, very tiny amount of degrees on your hand. So it's extremely difficult for people to do this in the way I imagined, at least. So that was also like a wake up call. Okay, maybe I should just do electronics, you know?
Yeah.
All right. So that's thing. And then after this piece, I really wanted to devote more time to focus on the sound, like I said, because of these limitations. And I had an increasing interest in making audiovisual pieces because I had so much fun putting that work together, and it was a great feeling to play live as well, not only being a composer on the back. So I decided, okay, I'm not gonna make only instrumental music anymore. And then I went into the rabbit hole, like I was saying. So I started to do generative sounds with a programming language which is called Super Collider. It's still to this day one of my favorite programming languages because it is so powerful when you yeah, we just you can create whole pieces of music just with code. This is, for example, a simple idea. It's just a sawtooth wave with filtering. That means yeah, it's a pretty standard synth, I would say, but the way you program it is with, of course, numbers and patterns, and that clicked for me very well with how I was imagining music in the first place. Um, I also have an example of my first purely generative music
Oh wow.
uh, piece. Unfortunately, we don't have sound with this setup, so you cannot hear it. But maybe later I can point to a link so you can hear it if
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
curious.
If you don't mind, you know, after at the conclusion, after we're done, share some links with us. We can put them in the description of this video.
Sure thing. Yeah, let's do that. So I'm gonna skip this, and then finally, as an early audiovisual piece, is this one. It's called Vsig. That was done between 2014 and 2015, if I'm not wrong, and it's for live electronics, live visuals, and a stroboscopic light, and a violin. Um, and actually, the girl playing this is my wife now.
Oh, nice. That's awesome.
so, so it turned out well, right?
Yeah, exactly. It worked out.
And so these are some views of that piece. I had two screens, and I had a projection from the back, and it was all generative. So the violin produces the graphics that you see. So it's all tied one to one. And I have a little video as well. You cannot hear it again, but at least the video you can see while we talk, perhaps. Yeah, you really cannot hear this, right?
Yeah. No, I can't hear it now.
Okay, yeah, yeah. So the idea with this was to explore time stretching in both the visual and the audio. So the things on the back, you see the screen there. I was playing around with trying to create particles and things like that. And whenever she plays notes in her violin, you will see that the visuals change. There's some processing that I'm doing to that, but the idea was to see how I could build this. And there's some hardcore flashes that come as well. That's the stroboscopic light. So it was not very, that's, you saw it there. I really like that because of how violent sometimes your sensory your sensory overload sometimes needs some refreshment, and when you overload it even more, you kind
Hmm.
of kind of pulls you back, and I like that a lot. So I use
Yeah.
it here.
Seems like a very intense, like powerful song, you know, or just like that she's playing
Yeah,
right now. It's crazy.
I'll put a link as well for this if you're
Great.
curious.
Yeah. That'd be fantastic.
All right, so let's just skip this. And then, yeah, furthermore, like I was saying, what I do or early and let's say work for before, it was all related to performing. So here I show some examples. again another piece with a violinist, uh, or playing live by myself in concert situations. So that's
Mhm.
mainly what I do. But I also did a lot of sketches. I love to program, so I'm always programming little systems to try things out. I'm not a very good sharer of my experiments. I'm trying to get better at that. So I have a lot of stuff in my drives,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm always playing around with
Those are
systems.
those are some incredible. I really like that one on the top left. I mean, all of them equally are great, but I don't know, that one on the top left just really speaks to me. It just kind of like pops. It's really nice.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, that's a reaction diffusion algorithm.
Nice. It's great.
Yeah.
Cool. And then, so on top of being a creative coder, like you said, you're an audiovisual artist. Like, what are your musical influences?
Yeah, that is a very, very hard question. Well, I obviously have tons of influences that I could say, but you mean music that influence my own music or that I love?
It could be, yeah, it could be a combination of the two. Or yeah,
Okay,
you can give a couple of both, whatever.
let's start with what I love. I think my favorite composer and music ever, and I will never change that, I think, because I've been stubbornly with the same idea for years and years. It's Bach, Johann Sebastian Bach.
Okay, yeah.
Is my
Very
favorite.
classical, yeah.
Yeah, so it's my favorite music. I think he's for me it's perfection in terms of music because it
Hmm.
combines everything that I find dear, which is a very algorithmic way of composing. So he has all the structures have that algorithmic nature. Fugues, counterpoint in general is very very algorithmic. But besides that, besides the technical achievement by Bach, which is outstanding and brilliant and genius, there is the beauty of it. So it's so profound. It's music that I find very profound.
Great.
So I would say Bach, and on the other hand, some yeah producers that I admire deeply are Outtaker. I don't know if you know them.
Nah. What is it, Altucker?
Outtaker, yeah, it's I maybe don't pronounce it very well. They're an English electronic duo.
Okay.
Let me just pull a. You still see my screen? Maybe if I
We
just
can
double
change
click.
we can change the scene when you pull it up, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you know them.
Altucker. Okay. And they're
Yeah,
a duo.
Outtaker.
It's like a two-piece duo.
Yeah, it's two. It's a duo, and they have been consistently releasing for many years. I have all their vinyls because I'm really love the way they think about sound. They are really, I don't know, the music they make is always looking forward, but it's still very, let's say, music based on beats and melodies and harmonies. But they progressed so much that at some point it became as well very abstract, very sound based, not anymore about melody or rhythm, but just experience of sound. And some of the concerts they do are in big spaces with no lights, no visuals, no nothing, just pure sound, and it's quite amazing. So I really appreciate what they do. I would say
Excellent.
those two completely different music, but I think those
Yeah.
are things that are high on my list.
Excellent. And then I know you have a keynote presentation that you'd love to share.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So
Pigments.
I thought I would share like a little bit how I see this whole generative art scene and
Yeah,
how I see. Yeah,
that'd be
just to
great.
explain it a bit.
Definitely.
All right, so I'm gonna try to be brief because there's quite some slides. I don't want to get too intellectual, but yeah, let's try to
Yeah,
see
whatever
where
you
we
want.
get.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited to check this out. So I'm pulling up my chair.
All right, cool. So yeah, speaking of generative art, I would recommend if you have time to check out Philip Galanter's "What is Generative Art?" It's a nice article, nice essay he wrote, because it kind of makes sense of what the term is. So as you see here, it should include this definition: known clusters of past and current generative art activity. So allow for the discovered forms of generative art, which I think is very relevant to what we are doing here with the technology, with art blocks, for example. Exists as a subset of all art, because obviously that definition can be contested, and be restrictive enough that not all art is generative art. So he's trying to give a context of what this is, what we're doing. Um, as a summary of that, I would say that it's just the application of algorithms as a strategy for the development of the art piece. So like I was saying, you have a system, you try to create a system, not a piece by itself, but you make a system that allows you to put your hands off a little bit of the creative process and allow accidents to happen, which are not accidents but are results of that system, right? And then some degree of autonomy from your own piece. So you don't make the choices, you let the algorithm make the choices.
Mhm.
So allows you to take a step further. That for me is quite important in generative art. Also, a couple of things that I think are important to keep in mind because navigating the space and seeing what people write sometimes, I think there's a little bit of misconception of what this means, what generative art means. First of all, it's absolutely not new. This is not groundbreaking, nothing new at all. It has existed forever because it is not restricted to computers. So generative art is anything that uses a system and also does not imply any particular ideology. I think that's quite important because other art movements like Impressionism or Surrealism or other isms, they all usually carry an ideology, but the generative art scene is so diverse that there's not such an alignment. So it's quite difficult to really pinpoint what it is all about. And here's some examples that are clearly not computer made.
Mhm.
So textile things from the Andes, from my region, for example, in Ecuador, where you have these mosaics that can also be considered generative because you're tiling things in certain geometric order based on some arbitrary decision. To what degree it is generative, to what degree is not, of course, is debatable. But I would say they rely on systems that are not per se the decisions of the artist, right? So along these lines comes the thing that I'm mostly fascinated by personally, which is the field of complexity theory. And complexity doesn't mean something difficult. It just means the, that is a space that tries to understand how simple entities can organize themselves without the benefit of any central controller into a collective whole that creates patterns, uses information, and even in some cases evolves and learns. And a fantastic book that you should all read is Complexity, A Guided Tour by Melanie Mitchell. She's an amazing writer, especially of these hard topics. She also has a book on AI that I recommend. So check her out. And this is the important part of this sentence I have put here. So in essence, complexity entails simple rules, a collective intelligence of some sort, multi-agent systems, something that is non-linear. That means something you cannot predict. And the result is always different than the sum of the parts. So it is more intuitive. You see things in nature that are complex. For example, the swarm of birds, a school of fish, or ants, because these are by themselves very simple units. They are very simple creatures in terms of their cognitive abilities, but as a whole create incredible patterns and have incredibly complex behavior. So that is what complexity studies. But also can be applied to systems like the blockchain or the stock market or neurons or even cities. All right. Again, from the same book, there's an experiment about uh, vinegar and baking soda that anyone can try. Just do it and see what happens. I'm not gonna play the video that I put here, but yeah, maybe try it out. It's quite fun, and that explains quite well that you have elements that are simple in principle, but when you put them in a dynamic environment, they create something new that is not what they were in the beginning. So another text that I recommend to understand complexity is this text by Alan Turing, the father of computing, and it's called The Chemical Basis of Morphogenesis. And basically here he described mathematically how the skin of animals is able to create these patterns. So if you think about it, it's just cells, but why do they do that? How do they do that? So that's kind of the beginning of this whole search of complexity and how that happens. And I'm going to show very briefly a tiny piece that made a huge impact in me. Is this piece called Cellular Forms from 2014 by Andy Lomas, who does amazing art. So it's this thing here. You're going to see basically an evolving entity. The
Wow.
algorithm for this is relatively simple. It's not a complex algorithm, but and yet can create very interesting forms over time. So if you see the interactions, suddenly starts to create a structure, and it's a sort of modeling of um, molecular interactions, right? So if you leave it over time, it starts to create more complex and more complex things. But it's just that the rules are interacting. They're simple in principle, but together create this complex stuff that you could never create in code from the top down, right? You always have to start
Mhm.
from simple to complex. All right, so um, well, this is more or less what I already said about how they organize and create patterns and so on. And then I wanted to make a brief mention that connects to my first release in art blocks, which Hashtractors. I wanted to mention Edward Lorenz because he branched out all these parallel studies into what is now known as chaos theory. So he was a meteorologist. He was studying how small changes in an input create huge changes in output. And this marks basically the end of determinism, which means that we, or let's say the scientific community, uh, figure out that actually you cannot predict everything, even if you know the first elements. So this is what Edward Lorenz plotted. It's basically, it looks like nothing, but is an astounding thing because it's basically the plotting of the weather. So those two lines, they are, he noticed that even though they started with very, very tiny numerical differences on the magnitude of 0.000 something, over time they created vastly different results, which didn't go very well with the mathematics at the time. So he discovered basically that there's chaos inherent in systems. So you may recognize this. That's the butterfly, classic butterfly from Lorenz. Uh, and then this is applied as well to the weather, stock markets, genetic algorithms, cellular automata, and networks. So I'm saying all these things because um, I want to make sense of what I will show later when we talk a little bit about the drops, because that relates to this whole thing. And at the core of the complexity theory, there's this phenomena of emergence, which means that something comes out of these simple processes. And for emergence to occur, there needs to be time, and there needs to be a process. So I put this little thing here because I love mushrooms as well, how they grow. It's quite nice. But if you see it, it's a beautiful process. They take time and something beautiful happens over time, right? So that illustrates what I'm trying to say. Very poorly, perhaps, but just look at the, the thing there. Um, so what I find fascinating about generative approach to making music and art in general is not necessarily the end result, but that's actually the process. Is that what I was saying that I love so much to make systems is because for me the process is really interesting. Um, here's a relatively complex description of what a process is. I recommend this book as well, Process Philosophy. It's slightly how do you say that, over analytical about processes, but it's still very good read to keep in mind. So I recommend that. And now we're coming back to Casey because when I was studying, Casey had a huge influence as well when I discovered his process pieces, his process compendium, I think it's called. So this is one piece of that collection. And when I saw this, I thought, wow, this is so interesting because when you see the piece itself, how he defined this algorithm and how he defines the piece, he wrote very simple things about the interactions of the elements, and yet when you leave them over time, create this incredibly complex visual that is quite attractive and is somehow very organic. So I have here the description of process 18 from Casey Reyes, and that's the end result, of course, made as an art piece. But for me, it was not even the art piece that was fascinating, but just the process of what I just showed before. So that means that the definition of the piece is not the piece itself, but the steps taken to get there. Also means that these steps happen over time and consist of elements, forms, behaviors, and processes as described by Casey. And each step is discrete and affects the results of the whole. And then I thought, can a similar process be applied to music? And that's where everything unraveled for me in terms of exploring generative art. So that's more or less the arc of my whole view on this field.
That's great. That's fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing us like all that information. I think, like you said, it would be great to have those links for some of those pieces or anything that you want to share, and that way we can just kind of drop it in the description of the YouTube video.
Absolutely.
But yeah, now I mean, I want to talk about some of the drops you've had on art blocks. You've actually completed, as of today, completed the trifecta of doing a factory, playground, and curated drop. But I want to start at the top though. I want to start on just touching base a little bit on actually on Hashtractors. That was your first drop on art blocks. Uh, like I said, it completes that trifecta. Like, can you tell us just like a little bit about that drop? Like, I feel like um, yeah, I just don't know like too much about it. We know a lot obviously about pigments and paths, which we'll talk a little about talk about in just a few minutes.
Sure thing. Yeah. With Hashtractors, let me see. Do I have something? Yeah, I can show this. So Hashtractors, it's very related to what I mentioned about chaos theory.
Hmm.
If you remember when I showed the chaos theory slides, there was a butterfly thingy, right? Like a kind of butterfly from Edward Lorenz. And I thought, yeah, I want to pay tribute to that. And I've been doing a lot with chaos theory in my own work. But for the art blocks piece, I thought, being my first thing and being the first tryout into art blocks, I didn't want to go too complicated. I just wanted to try it out, see
Yeah.
if it's really something for me. But I also wanted to do something that was dear. So then I decided, okay, let's just do strange attractors. So these are called strange attractors. Strange because they behave in a non-predictable way, and attractors because, as you see, they always orbit around a certain focal points. And
Mm.
that's not the name I give them, that's really how they're called mathematically, strange attractors. And here's some means from the Hashtractors collection, some others. And what is quite fascinating is, sorry, quite fascinating is the structures. They're quite complex over time. They're quite beautiful, quite complex. It's not something you can type as a function in a mathematics plotter, unless you know the equation for the chaos theory. In this case, sorry, not the chaos theory, but the chaotic system. Uh, and it's remarkable that such complexity can arise from these equations, which are actually quite simple. They are just equations that are consistent of a couple of variables and maybe three statements, and then you have this thing. And it's an iterative thing. It's amazing. And here's some others. So on the
Wow.
right here, number 78, you see the butterfly. That's the attractor that I showed before from Lawrence. Let me see if I can pull that one again, just to make it clear. Uh, oh yeah, here it is. Yeah, so the remarkable thing about these things is that if you know the algorithm, you will always get the same shapes. But if you change a tiny, tiny number like 0.001, sometimes it explodes completely. So you get nothing, or sometimes it collapses, or sometimes the distribution inside is different. So I thought, okay, that's perfect to make a small generative piece that should be predictable, but also should be varied.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was actually a really small mint count as well. Like how many was it? Like 1 or 200, something like that.
It was 128, I think.
128. Okay, yeah, I remember seeing that when it first came out. I was like, wow, that's like a really low number. But like you said, I think you wanted to just kind of like have a you just wanted to try out art blocks. I think probably at first to kind of see if it was something you wanted to explore a little bit further.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I'm glad you like stuck with it because your next project really set to that was Pigments, which I think is probably one of the most beautiful projects on art blocks. I think they look like moving paintings, and just the movement on it is just it's honestly just beautiful. So for anyone that hasn't
Thank you.
checked it out, yeah, check out Pigments on art blocks. It's in the curated section. Like I said, the outputs look like something straight up from like a painting that someone just created, but they have like this movement to it. I know there are some early sketches on your site. Can you share some of those images and talk a little bit about each of them?
Of course, yeah. Here, I think. Early sketches. Yeah, here. Yeah. Yeah, so actually, wouldn't it be more fun if I show you the actual system? I can show you
Sure, yeah.
yeah, maybe I have it here. Yeah, here. So this is the pigment system, but let me show you the sketches first because that's maybe interesting to see. Um, yeah, so I was exploring this technique called domain warping. Like I said, very common technique in the shader world. And at first I thought, okay, maybe I want to do something 3D, and then I thought, let's just use it as it typically is used. The domain warping technique is used often as a height map, so that means extruding the points of a geometry so that acquires this 3D texture or 3D property, let's say. And as you can see here, um, yeah, it's just elevating over this. Let me see if I can. Oh, I lost my control on this camera, anyways, because it has been for a while, so I didn't check it. But you can
Uh,
see that was the first sketch I made with this pigments idea.
wow.
Then I thought, okay, but maybe I don't like so much maybe the 3D is too much to put on chain. I wasn't sure what the limitations were at the time. I was just playing around. And then I thought, okay, let's just focus on trying something purely 2D. So I put together this other version where I have the shader, but I also have a normal calculation to try to extrude it on space. And I started to get this kind of topologies that you see here. Um, so I thought, okay, that started to get a bit more interesting. I thought maybe I can do something that has certain depth, even though it's 2D, maybe add some level of depth that feels like oil, like an oil painting. So after this, I thought, okay, let's rewrite the code. Maybe let's do something else. Then I came into this state where I was started to layer things on top of each other. And as you can see, there are a couple layers here. But I was not really satisfied with this, and I started to add a lot of parameters to it. Let me see if this still works. I'm not sure. Uh, if I do this, yeah. So here I can, you see, I can change
Oh wow, yeah, the movement on it.
the movement and change also the underlying. So there's three layers in pigments. There's many layers actually, 5 to 6 layers of textures that are superposed, but each pair of layers have its own noise algorithm, and these are the algorithms that you see here. These are very common noise algorithms, and the way they interact is chosen on this top layer. So I was playing around, okay, what if I use a cellular algorithm combined with a Perlin noise and some Herbit noise, and then increasing the variables, see what I get, is it interesting, is it not, what space works, what doesn't work. And so I spent a lot of hours just playing around like this until I started to get things I liked, right? Maybe now I'm not succeeding so much finding nice things, but okay.
Kind of
You
reminds
get
me at some points, like looking under a microscope and looking at some cells or just some different activity moving around. I think it's really cool.
yeah, it's kind of a scientific, exploration of what works and
Hmm.
stuff. And then I went a little bit overcomplicated because I started to compute other things that I really didn't need at the end. This is an experiment getting normals to try to pull them up in space. Then I went back to the idea of 3D maybe, yes, again. And yeah, so this is not really useful code. So I said, okay, no, let's not do that. And then I ended up coming up with this, which is the actual pigments system. It's already polished and all that, and it has a nice interface where I can play with stuff. But actually, I'm very lazy by nature, so I always program everything so I can automate as much as possible. That is why we become programmers in the first place, I
Yeah,
believe.
I mean, you're working smart. I think that's the way it should be.
Yeah. So I programmed this. I made a library for this platform. This platform is called Touch Designer. It's my favorite tool. I use it every time in my personal work and also in my professional work. I'm a Touch Designer developer. Um, and I made this open source tool that allows you to explore parametric spaces. It's called TDMorph. So I use this in my pigments thing. And basically, what my tool allows you to do is to set presets. So you can click on these things, and it will make a preset. It will jump to a preset, let's say. So, and also allows you to search within that space randomizations. So I could say, for example, just randomize this parameter, to see, okay, what works. Maybe this one, randomize this one. Maybe not so much. Maybe this. Yeah, no. So I was doing that a lot, just randomizations. You can also randomize all at once to get really strange stuff. So that didn't work out so well. So I had to more fine tune it. That's how I developed the palettes and all that stuff. So here you can see. the changes of color, how that affects things. So I
Oh
can
yeah.
change, uh, and it's quite dramatic. I wouldn't do it this way if I would have to do it again because it's very complex. The how the colors are mapped, they are not really linear. So if I put a red on the first layer, it's not guaranteed that you will get a red, as you see, right?
Got it. Yeah.
And that is because the way the different layers interact with each other in terms of the noise functions. So yeah, that was that was hard to come up with all the colors. That's where I spend the most time, just finding good colors. You know,
Hmm.
that's I'm not a color guy, so it's hard for me to to
Yeah.
spend that.
Well, yeah, I want to talk a little bit about that. You know, the colors. You know, I think the colors work really, really well with each other on like each mint. Like, how do you go about selecting the palettes? And you know, as far as like naming them, was there any like rhyme or reason for the names, or is it more of a yeah? I'm just curious if it has any influence, like on your like if there was something that was influencing your life and you kind of utilized that for
Oh
naming the
yeah,
color.
yeah. Well, so like I said, I made a lot of presets. So if I click here, generate, you already get the ones that I approved, the things that I liked. So I kept for the actual release. Um, so that's how I structured this. You may recognize some of this from the drop. And then the way I dealt with color was I created just a lot of palettes, like a lot, more than 200 or something, or 300. And then I just every day will wake up and do 20, just go over them. Does it work for this thing? So that's what you see down here. Basically, it allows me to check all the palettes for all the layouts. So I can choose at any point, okay, let's try this one or Arulio. Mm. But then also here are the pre-selected ones that I know work. So I can choose them. And then within those boundaries, I would just select something that I already know works. For example, for this one, maybe this looks nice. Then I
Hmm.
will go here to the left, tweak a little bit the colors to find another combination, or just change the hue, you know, or the saturation or something to try to find combinations. So it was a very manual, very laborious process to come up with all the palettes. And the naming, because I was spending all my energy into this, you know, and I just told you that actually I'm quite lazy, I decided it should be very, very simple. I'm just gonna use half half of a word in Spanish with half of a word in English or half of a word in Latin, and I just put them together, you know.
That's
Then
great.
then I don't have to think much, and I'm just gonna name them, and it's gonna have nice names, and then I could come up with 200 plus names just like that, because it was a very, very lazy process, you know, just in a way, also algorithmic process. Take half of one, half of another, and sometimes some have very specific ones, like for example, cascara. This literally means in Spanish, well, it's the skin of a fruit, you know, when you eat a fruit, because when I saw one of the variations with this color, it reminded me to a mandarin. So I said, okay, cascara, let's write it down. But there's not really a deeper connection than that.
Okay.
The only thing that was quite arbitrary is that I decided, I don't know if you played that game where you live, but it's a game where you have to make, you have to compete to see who gets the most words of a certain letter under different categories. It's a you use it with a pen and a paper. I used to play that a lot with my mom, my dad, and my sister when I was a kid.
Sounds very familiar. Yeah, I'm not sure what the name of it is off the top of my head.
Yeah, so and then I decided I want a color for each letter. You know, that's is a must because I always hated that in that game some colors don't some letters don't have a color. You know,
Yeah,
so I thought, okay, I need to remedy that. So then I decided to do that. Yeah.
that's great. And then, you know, it looks like a lot of experimentation went into the layouts of pigments. I see that there are 13 in total. How do you go about assigning probability of each one showing up?
Yeah, so what I did was I have a statistics here, a statistics analysis. So I programmed these statistics in such a way that I could at any time, at any point in time, change the minting script. So I have here my minting script. But of course, this is all made in Touch Designer in Python and GLSL, which is the shader language. So Python I used to make all the algorithm, and then I have to port this to JavaScript. But that is relatively painless, so that's no problem. And basically here I choose the percentages, as you can see. So 70, well, yeah, 70% for this. And there was also a lot of playing with these statistics, seeing how the distribution of a certain thing, what curve does it give me? Is it a satisfactory curve? So for example, here you see the color curve, and the
Yeah,
color curve,
very faint, but
for
yeah,
me, it looks good because that means that there is some tendency that is, it has a pattern to it.
got it.
Uh, so I kind of design things so that they look visually, if I plot them, they look the way I imagined them. And I tried to choose distributions that make sense on a large count because this was 1024, so it was challenging to come up
Yeah.
with a strategy for that. So I did a lot of testing in this sense. And whenever I change a variable here in one of these things, if I choose, for example, 2 or if I choose 9 or whatever, then in the program, I made it so that I can always just say here statistics, and I press this, and it recalculates everything.
Oh
So I
wow.
see the effect that it has, and so that's how I planned a little bit the distribution.
And then as far as like, your favorite layouts, would you assign those to show up more often, or would you want those to have like a lower probability to show up throughout the project?
Yeah, so I decided that they should happen more. The things that I
Yeah.
like best, they should happen more. Yeah.
Okay. That makes total sense. And then do you have any favorite pigments that you'd want to share with us
Oh yeah, yeah.
from the
I
collection?
have a couple. I just need to find where did I put the numbers actually. Uh, hmm. Oh yeah. Okay. Hold on 1 second.
No
I
problem.
need to pull my. Here it is. It's hidden behind the. So yeah, I also made. I share this thing, these components, because I know there's other touch designer users in the Airbox community. So I made an API reader that is native to touch designer, so you can connect to the API from Artblocks directly from the system. So if you see here, like this is I think Jeff's piece, or if I'm not wrong.
Uh, I think that's actually not Eric, but Dan's piece. It's
Oh,
Genesis. It
done.
looks
Okay.
like. Yeah.
So then you can put any project here, for example, 128, let's say, and then it will pull the data, and it will fail, of course, because I'm showing you now, and it always happens when I show you. Of course, let me see what happens. If this is gonna work. Yeah, cool. So now it's gonna pull my project,
Okay. Wow.
and then I can also see it live here. But yeah, so now the cool thing is now I can just pass something and it will just pull it from for us. So my one of my favorite means, I hate to admit it, but it's true, is number 0. I love this.
Got it. Yeah.
I was so happy that I got this myself.
What about it? Did you really that really spoke to you as one of your favorite pieces? Besides it being your personal piece.
Yeah, I think, I am not so fond in my own work personally. When I make a piece, I have never played so much with color as I did with this piece. And this is just exploding in color, it's like all full of color, all possible colors. And yet to me it feels very organic. And I think it's because the palette resembles a little bit those Renaissance paintings like Rubens or Jan van Eyck or something like that. And it has a certain organicity, and I love the flow of this layout. This is the flame layout,
Hmm.
and you have these trajectories, right? And it catches your eye, so your eye goes like a little bit up and down, and I just love how it moves up and down and changes in that sense. And the way the colors are mixed is something I will never come up with myself if I would have to paint it. But I just love that it did this, and it's quite appealing.
Yeah, that's a beautiful mint.
So then let me see another one that I like. I think 914 was pretty cool. Um, so that would be this guy. Oh wait, no, sorry, I need to change something here. Oh, yeah, here is the hash. Generate. So this one is again the flame. That's one. This is 914, and what I like about this is the palette itself. So it's not anymore just that it's flame, but somehow it has like a dragon-like quality from my childhood when I was reading these books. There was a scene of a dragon spitting fire and the villagers were killed or something. The
That's
illustration
great.
had this feeling, so it just brought that memory. Was quite nice. Then let me see, 179 as well. So that's this one. Um,
Oh wow.
that's of course when I'm regenerating them, so they may not look exactly like the minted ones because, as you know, they are infinite, so they're always changing.
Hmm.
But this is the partitions, and all the partitions they look similar. And I love all partitions. It was an accident in the code that created them, but I really like them, so I just kept it. They look like beehives, but also cells or some
Yeah.
atomic structure. So I love them a lot.
And the
Uh,
color in
you,
that one also is just beautiful. I like that bottom right area with all the greens and blues. I think that the colors and shapes.
oh, this
Just
thing here,
yeah. I really like that part of that piece also. It's really nice.
yeah, yeah. I think it's quite different and quite nice.
Hmm.
Um, you tell me when it's too many, okay? I have a bunch
Well, we do.
more.
How about we do one more?
Okay, this one. Let's do this one.
Yeah, that one's really good.
So this is also kind of a little bit of an oddity in terms of the colors, and is one of the favorites from my wife. I promised her that if no one bought this one, I would buy it.
Did you end up buying it or?
No, no, I think it belongs to one of my dear collectors.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
not, yeah, I'm not sure what the status of it now. It is now, but I like it a lot. It's
Yeah,
black and it's a bit strange. So yeah.
that's great. And then, what's the best way you think that people should display pigments? I feel like it's one of those pieces. Obviously, there's a lot of movement, but like in the ideal world, like how would you want all of this work to kind of be displayed? If it was like an exhibit or you're showcasing it somewhere.
Yeah, I'm very used to projection mapping and big projections on huge walls.
Hmm.
That's how I usually show my stuff. So I would imagine it something like that. I didn't really think of this piece being like a small format frame. However, I must say that when I saw people doing that, I thought, wow, that looks so pretty. So I then decided to do it myself as well. But I do think they need because it's animated, they need a display that can do that, so they can bring the colors out. And what I used in my machine is an OLED display. That I think is, if you have one of those, I think is a great way to show it. In
Okay.
a perfect world, I would say, yeah, if I could get like a gallery with a lot of projections, like big projections
Yeah.
with high quality beamers, that would be epic. Yeah.
And then would you, consider that down the road? I don't know if you've showcased any of these pieces in an exhibit or, gallery space in the past, but is that something that you would potentially, explore if given the opportunity?
Um, yeah, so definitely interested of checking that format. I did a lot of installations in galleries, but I never done an exhibition in galleries. So the experience is different, of course, with an installation because they tend to be interactive. So I would put something in the exhibition and people will walk around. But yeah, we'll be curious to see how that plays out in terms of actually showing something. It will be a very new experience to me, at least.
Yeah, I honestly think, we need to make this happen in 2022. I think just given the work for Pigments and, we'll talk about Pass in just a moment, I think I would just love to see these displayed, especially, Pigments, just huge, like you said, just maybe projection mapping. I think they would just look incredible, and it deserves like that. Yeah, a space where people can see multiple of them at the same time. And then I don't know. I think, yeah, I hope you're able to like do something like that in the future. I think it would be just, yeah, it would just do your work more justice than what's already out there. And yeah, I think it's fantastic.
Thanks. Yeah, looking forward to try it for sure.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, if anyone's listening and know anything, hit up Darien. Love to make this happen. I think we should make it happen in 2022. But yeah, I want to talk about your project Paz, which was just fully minted out. So congratulations on that. Is
Thank
your
you.
playground drop? And there was 523 mints. I was curious to know, does that hold any significance or meaning, or is that
Yes,
just kind of random number?
it's a prime number.
Okay,
For the other ones, I always did powers of two,
got it.
but
Okay,
this time I thought, okay, let's do a prime number, just because, why not?
love it. Yeah, no, I think I feel like there's always, especially if it's not like a square number of like 100 or 200. I'm like, all right, there's got to be some kind of, reason why they come up with this number. So I always feel like I have to ask. Yeah, these pieces are incredible. I've only been able to spend a little bit of time just kind of cycling through some of the mints, but I feel like I'm almost in like a spaceship exploring some wild new planet or some cave. What was the inspiration behind the creation of this project?
So this project is really a homage to the demo scene. Uh, like I said, my practice has never been gallery spaces, has always been real time performances, and really just purely programming tech that runs fast and that works well in performance situation. So the demo scene is really about showing off your coding skills, but also showing the tech, like what the tech can do, and also to play around with math, purely math, to create these worlds and these kind of things. And I have been drawn to it since I wrote shaders. I was like blown away with the work, for example, from Inigo Quiles or people like Shane. There's a lot of legendary demo scene people. Actually, Peter Pasma, he's also
Oh
part of
yeah,
the Artblocks.
nice.
He's also a demo scener. um, I was never into the demo scene per se, but I was always looking from a back when I started programming. So I never went to a demo party, for example, but I always appreciate the work, and I learned a lot from these people. So it was a way to play with what I learned to see if I could make something of my own that is animated, that pushes a little bit the boundaries of the Artblocks engine, and see if can I actually do it on chain. Is it gonna run well on phones and also on computers? Um, so it was all that combination of things that made me try to do it. I was happy I managed to make it work to some extent in
Yeah,
most devices.
I love it because you have the warning where it's like you need kind of like a powerful or dedicated processor to run this. And whenever I see that, I know Alexi does that with some of his projects, but I'm always like, all right, I got to check this out because you're almost like pushing the limit of like what's possible at this given time. And I think that's something really cool. You don't settle with what's just given out there. It's like, all right, you just keep pushing, and then let's just see if it works. And yeah, it turned out to be fantastic.
I think it's important always to try to go a little bit further, to push yourself, to not be too comfortable. I think
Mm-hmm.
that that's what makes you grow. Also want to say that, yeah, I mean, there's so many incredible artists in the demo scene. There's so many incredible artists doing things with shaders. So we haven't really seen what's possible for sure. There's so many people doing incredible stuff. Mine is just a little contribution to that, but I mean, you definitely should check out at least to start with Inigo Quiles' work, because that's really going to show you what's possible and what a true master can do. Like, wow, that's sometimes incredible stuff that you cannot believe it's code.
Excellent. Yeah, we'll definitely have to drop a link in the the show notes of the YouTube video description. So we'll definitely do that. Do you have any like early examples of what the project first looked like when you first started coding this playground drop?
Oh yeah, yeah. I can pull the same way we did it with Pigments. I have the program here, but let me see. I don't think I kept for this one. Oh yeah, I did keep the basis at least. This is the earliest sketch I had.
Oh wow.
Yeah, can check this one. Um, check this. Okay, so I think, yeah. Okay, let's see it. I don't know if. Oh yeah, I have controls even. Okay, nice. So this is how it was looking like at the beginning. I can make this bigger. It's not doing anything. This should be big actually. Hold on.
No problem.
Yeah, there we go.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's how it was at the beginning. Um, yeah, as you see, there's a lot of artifacts around. It's not clean. This is because it's all done with math. So there's not really in the shaders. It's not like you have a camera, you have lights, and you have a material, and you have mesh. You have to do your own little render engine. So you have to mathematically define your everything basically from scratch.
Hmm.
So in order to do that, you also need to calculate the terrain properly. Clearly, this was not properly done. So the first sketch was very quickly prototyping, can I make it work like this? And I started with a tunnel because it's the simplest way to create a Z translation. So actually the shader to make a tunnel is very simple. You just draw basically a tube. You make a tube and then you put your camera in the center of the tube.
Mm.
You move the camera like this and you basically displace the tube in such a way that feels like it's a tunnel. But in reality, you're really just inside a tube. The tube is doing
Yeah.
this basically, right? And the edges of here is just a displacement using some type of noise. But this, for example, this example will never run online because noise is very expensive to compute in real time. It runs in my machine because I have a Wi-Fi computer and it's locally, but it will never run online, at least this as it is. So I had to optimize it, but I already had some parameters that I don't even remember what they do, but let's see. Oh yeah, here. So here you see the different
Oh wow, yeah,
deformation.
the different textures.
Mhm. Different options of deforming things. I can also control already the paths if I'm not wrong. That's why the project is called paths, because the tube has these paths that can follow
Hmm.
along.
And talk
So
to me
let
a
me
little bit
see.
about the light. You know, there's this burst of light that kind of shoots every few seconds. Is that just to kind of highlight, you know, the different texture that's, you know, you're when you're traveling through those tubes?
Oh yeah, the light was, it's just a way to show that the space goes always deeper and deeper. And I wanted, actually I use, it's also an accident, the light, because okay, I show you this sketch, which is not really the end piece. So let me show you the end piece, okay? So the end piece is this.
Yeah, those mints are really really cool. It's kind of like a
So if
swirl
I,
to it. Yeah.
so if you see here, like this is the end result, and it has properly computed terrain, and it looks better, and all that. But one thing I needed to do to make sure that this will run infinitely and it will be correct is that I needed to see if the path is going to be accurately drawn based on the functions that I'm using to deform that tube I was talking about. So
Hmm.
I'm just using a very simple set of sine and cosine waves to do that. And basically to check that, I added a light that was a very strong light, purely white, and I just moved it on space. And I saw, okay, it's actually doing the right thing. And then I thought, wait a minute, maybe I should, what if I animate this light, you know? And then it looked cool. So I thought, nah, maybe it should be part of the piece. So then I just left it there. Then I forgot about it. And every time I would come to it, I really enjoyed it. So I thought, nah, now it's part of the piece.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that. And do you have any favorite? I don't know if you had an opportunity to look through any of the mints. Any of them kind of like pop out, you know, that you really enjoyed, or do you need a little bit
I
more
did.
time?
I didn't have any chance to see them
Yeah.
yet. No, yeah, I was too busy with the whole madness that doing a
Yeah.
drop on art blocks is. So, but I can show you something that, for example, I really love this type of terrains. This tunnel that is complex. It has bifurcations and it has a nice color. Uh, but I also love this other type of things, which is these I call them exoplanets.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
You're kind of like some extraterrestrial. I don't know. Yeah, that's how I look at it. I guess it's really really cool
yeah,
though.
so it's like an extraterrestrial planet of sorts.
Yeah.
And let me see, I have some. Oh yeah. So I discarded some things. For example, this one, this doesn't exist on Artlocks because I thought it's too risky for the camera. Sometimes the camera will go into the field. So I decided, okay, let's not do that. I clipped it, but still sometimes you don't know. So I
Don't.
didn't want to
Yeah.
take the risk. So I decided more for this type of terrains. Uh, and I just love about this. I love the way they create this feeling that there's some gas around it. I wanted to create that feeling of it being a strange environment, and you have this fog and there's a kind of gassy atmosphere. And the thing I did last with this one is actually the stars that you see on the back. It is a trick. the stars are not really done in the same way as this is. So it's not really a 3D space in that sense, but it's a warped 2D thing. And I had to do that to make it cheap so that it can run online. Otherwise, it would not run. But I think it looks nice, so I kept it like this. And
Yeah, yeah, I think it's a fantastic project. But yeah, Paths, which just sold out today. Congratulations on that one. On
thanks a lot.
Darien.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of want to move forward outside of the projects. I feel like, and I talk about this with everyone. All the artists I interact with. Mental health. I feel like is such an important thing in this space. Like everyone, we know artists work really, really hard, day in and day out. To kind of perfect their project. How do you wind down once a project is fully minted out? Like for today, for instance, your project Paths just minted out. Like are you going to have some time, or do you find ways to kind of decompress and kind of relax after a project, or like how do you get into like that Zen mindset to kind of just chill out after a drop?
Well, if you know how, please tell me because I I don't know. I think I had a really really hard time after Pigments sold out
Mm-hmm.
because I was not prepared. I don't think anybody's really prepared for that kind of flow of sudden wealth and sudden excitement and sudden attention, and
Yeah.
it's crazy. I was very, it hit me in a bad way, to be honest. So I
Um,
was quite depressed for like a couple of weeks because everything felt unreal and felt I lost a bit of touch of what my life had been so far. I was pretty sure of what I was doing, and I was pretty sure of where I wanted to go. And now suddenly this crazy thing that got way more attention that all the work I have done so far. I never got so many eyes on me. I never got all that stuff, and that was difficult to deal with at first. I'm very grateful for friends who supported me on that. I think on the fact of mental health issue, I think it's important that you have people who are close to you, that you keep close as well in these difficult times when you feel down. Always helps a lot to talk with people, especially if you have someone who went through something similar. I was super lucky that Bear was here, my friend.
mm.
He helped me a lot to process things. Also, my friend Yap, he's one of my best friends, helped me to. He's also, by the way, the one who made the posters for the promos.
Oh, nice.
Uh,
That's great.
we had a lot of discussions about everything, crypto, about morality, about ethics.
Mm-hmm.
I had a bit of a crisis. So I think
Yeah.
it's great that you asked this question because I think it's more common than not that for artists who are not used to this kind of thing, it's very impactful, right?
Yeah.
I mean, especially the idea, like what I said before, that some of us have been doing this for a long time, and we put all our energy into creating things for fun, and we sometimes share code online. I have a lot of open source tools and open source projects and so on, and I never had any attention on that level, never had such a recognition on that level. So that jump is very very abrupt, and I don't think it's so natural, and it's not something that you're prepared for, right?
Yeah. I don't think you can prepare for that because it's like you said. You're you're in your normal space day to day, and then you have this drop, and out of nowhere, your life changes in so many different ways, and it's hard to process. I'm sure it's got to be incredibly hard to process all that. When so many people are asking questions, and yeah, I'm sure it's got to be overwhelming. But
Indeed, yeah. Take some adjustments. I must say though that now I feel pretty okay after PATS. I
mhm,
already had the experience from before.
yeah,
I approach it with a different mindset totally, and I know what I want to do next. So I feel much better now. I feel happy now. It's good.
good,
I'm
good. No, I'm
I'm very
glad.
grateful and happy that people like the piece. And yeah,
Excellent. Yeah, and I think there needs to be more done in the crypto NFT space with regards to mental health. I feel like, it's hard for people to talk about it, but I really think that once you do bring it up, and it's like an elephant in the room, once you bring it up and all the time, then it's not going to be something where it's like taboo or people feel like ashamed to talk about it. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's something really important, and I really appreciate you kind of opening up about that. Do you have any favorite books or resources that you use, which you would recommend to other artists, other generative artists that are coming into this space?
yeah. I have. I think you refer specifically in the context of generative art, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So Based on everything I talked about, I would recommend a bunch of books. I don't know if you want me to put the list or I should read the list. What's best?
Yeah, if you want to provide a list to me, and we could put it in the show notes,
Yeah, maybe I can
that'd be
also
great.
I can put it here as well. I
Okay.
made this little list because I knew this question in advance. So the first one is Complexity, A Guided Tour by Melanie Mitchell. Fantastic book, especially you want to understand complex systems.
Mhm.
Chaos by James Gleick is a classic. The Computational Beauty of Nature, I think, is a wonderful book for anyone who wants to explore simulations of nature with computers. You start with cellular automata, which is a classic algorithm, and you start to evolve to flocking and all sorts of interesting genetic algorithms. It's quite a nice book for programmers to explore. Then philosophically, aesthetically, and everything, this book is also a classic. God the Leisure Bach and Eternal Golden Braid. It's a beautiful, fantastic brain teaser of a book. Recommend it highly. The Algorithmic Beauty of Plants by, forgive me for butchering this name, Brenislav Prushenkevich and Aristide Lindmeyer. We all know who Lindmeyer is, or well, most people know who Lindmeyer is, but not many know Prushenkevich. And it's because he adapted all his ideas to do this book. And basically, the book teaches you all about L systems. I remember I mentioned the work of these artists who use L systems, so you can learn how to do that with this book. It's quite nice. If you're interested on sound, my favorite field of exploration is microsound. I recommend this one by Curtis Rhodes. It shows you how to program microsound basically, and also the history of it. Then the evolutionary dynamics of complex systems by Charles Dyke, again about complexity. The article I mentioned in the presentation, what is generative art, complexity theory as context for art theory. I think every person who dives into generative art, whether it's a collector or an artist, should know this article because I think it summarizes a lot of the questions and concerns I see in the space a lot. Then on growth and form, it's another classic book by Darcy Wenton Thompson, Wentworth Thompson. Uh, it's really interesting because it basically shows you what I mentioned before, that simple things grow into complex things. It's a wonderful read. Then if you want to learn how to program shaders, you can start with the Book of Shaders by Patricia Gonzalez Vigo and Jen Lowe. It's a fantastic resource to start because it goes very mildly from the bare basics to already quite nice looking things. Among them, I think even explains the technique used for pigments. So if you want to learn how that is, you can check the principle here. And then pretty much every single article by Inigo Gilles. Like I said, Inigo is a fantastic artist and great educator, has put a lot of energy into that, into publishing articles. So just get your hands on that and you will learn a lot about shaders in specific.
Excellent. And then, how can people reach out to you? Should they have any questions? Any social media plugs? Any ways? Yeah, people can reach out to you.
Um, well, I am trying to be more active on Twitter. I'm not the best with social media. I'm not feeling very good on it, to be honest, in general. But after exploring all this, I'm trying to be more active there, also on Instagram and on Discord, of course, on the
Mhm.
channel. But I think by far the best way to contact me if you really want to plan something or have a specific burning question that is a bit more complicated than what you can do on Twitter, just email me. That's always a nice thing. And you can find that on my website. And my website is just my name.com, so darienbrito.com.
Yeah, and I highly recommend everyone check out the website. You have a really, really good, like, deep dive, in depth conversation, or not conversation, but article about like pigments. And are you planning to do something for pads, or
Uh,
is
well,
that out of the question?
it takes quite a lot of effort to make an
Yeah,
article that is worth reading. So I might do it, but I'm not planning yet to.
yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't plan to.
Take
Yeah.
your time on that. I mean, you just had your job, so I'm not pushing you at all. I think obviously there's definitely some more. You haven't even gone through the men, so obviously I would love for you to spend some time doing that. But Darien Brito, thank you so much for joining me on After Dinner Mints. Really, really appreciate your time and talking to us about, all your projects. And yeah, really look forward to seeing what comes out next in your world. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much to you, Panya, for the invitation. Very happy to talk about all this and fantastic to be part of it all.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate you. And yeah, just with some news and notes for everyone tuning in. This was our last show of 2021. I want to thank everyone who has helped put the show together. Luke, who has been a massive help, allowing us to put this show together in a live stream and recorded format. Also, a big shout out to Snowfro, Jeff, Carolina, Hannah for their help and support. On next month's show, which would be in January, on January 5th, which is a Wednesday, 2022 at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. That'll be a live stream show with Tyler Hobbs and Bona Fedenhan. I believe this week they're going through incomplete control, so we'll talk about that. Obviously, Fidenzas, and I think that'll just be a great way to kick off the new year. So thank you for everyone tuning in, for all the collectors, artists that have supported the show, and yeah, I think we're going to do some big things in 2022. And yeah, this is episode number 30. So thank you for everyone for following us. And with that being said, thank you again to Darien Brito for joining me on After Dinner Mints. Everyone tuning in, make sure you comment, like, and subscribe to the Art Blocks YouTube channel. Be kind to each other. Buy what you love. Set up a hardware wallet, to kick off the new year. Please set up a hardware wallet. I say this all the time. If you haven't done it, DM me. I will help you set you up, whatever you need. And we will see you all next year. Happy New Year to everyone, and have a good day.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.